Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome to probably a hot take for a whole bunch of you out there, because I can already feel it. You're just like losing your mind over the concept about what I'm about to propose here. I've been reading a novel. Some of you might already know what I'm reading. Just for fun, actually. But imagine that, reading a book for fun and not for content, because I just wanted to read it again. And in doing so, I found out, there's been a couple of additions to the series, because I stopped reading it in mid '80s, late '80s, whatever. But I'll go into that tomorrow when I finally finish the first book. But I was thinking about this and talking a little bit about it here and there. And that's, the title, Magic Items for First Level Characters. Back in the day, back when I was a kid, sometimes, every once in a while, the GM would just be like, yeah, you start with a +1 sword. It's your dad's sword or your grandpa's sword or whatever, right? Just because, it added a little more flavor. I mean, Conan started with his old man's sword, and it was probably, not a magical sword, but if you use certain rules, it might have been a +1, 2, or 3 weapon of quality that, still gave the mathematical bonuses, but no magic, right? Because there's no real magic in Conan for the most part that he ever gets to hang on to. It's only there for a short story, and then it's gone, because that's just, that was the early days, and the idea of long-lasting magic and things like that, other than Excalibur and things like that, really just didn't really exist. So you can't fault them. They did with what they had. They helped pave the way. But I'm also reminded of stories of GMs who randomly do everything. They do everything, but then when it comes to magic items, oh, that's too powerful, I have to roll again. What'd you say? We played through this game, fair and square, with random crap left and right. But then when it came to the reward, that's too much. Personally, I would have thrown something like that in and watched the player characters, just either tear themselves apart. I get that. No, I get that. I get that. Or maybe they would be smart enough, wise enough, and go, well, it's a magic user item, so let's let Bob have the freaking staff of power, and maybe he'll use it to save our bacon every once in a while, and he won't get killed quite so easily because he's got a cool ass super powerful magic item. And personally, I quoted as saying before, you can't hit me with anything that's going to break my game. I can give you anything, and it's not going to ruin the game, for me at least. Maybe for you, but I really don't see a limit. Another aspect of this idea is when you're doing a generational game, and you're playing a fighter, and he gets to like 12th or 15th level, and it's time to retire, and he has kids, and his first eldest son wants to go adventuring, and you tell the party or the group, we're going to roll up some first level characters. They're all going to be kids of your previous characters, so make up some characters. Maybe I'll give you some bonuses because your old man had like a 19 strength, so I'll give you a plus on the strength, because what the hell, your dad had it. There's a chance. I mean, genetics should play a part in something like that. If, the stories of the gods having children with mortals, and those children, are half gods, well, we should probably have kind of some high stats, right, to reflect that. But this isn't about that. That'll come later, does the player character get to give his due character whatever he wants? And where do you get off telling them no? Other than the fact that you don't want to run that game because you are just not, as good a DM as you think you are or profess to be. Any one of my player characters right now, and most of them right now are like 13, 15th level-ish, right? If they decided to retire and then, years later, hand every single magic item they've got to their first level kid, wouldn't be a problem. They could have it all, be first level, I wouldn't give them any XP for it. That's for damn sure, because then they're not first level, and they miss out on that. Not because I'm being stingy, but because they would literally miss out on the benefits, and that would be kind of, you know, the double edge of that sword. Sure, you can have all that crap, but you don't get the XP for it. And now when you find new stuff, you know, well, you'll get XP for that, but, you know, you won't get it for the stuff that was just, you know, here you go, even though, well, because the first character got the XP for it because they found it. Now you're just giving it away. You know, it just makes sense, you know, right? Besides, you don't want to, you know, just go, okay, well, on your birthday, you get 10 magic items, and now you're 10th level. Well, I don't want to be 10th level. I want to, you know, because that's what they would say. I mean, any good player be like, yeah, no, I'm okay. I'll you know, I'll give my kid, you know, some stuff so he can go out adventuring, so he doesn't get killed, so I don't have to worry about him. I mean, if you've got kids, you know what it's like when you know, like my boy right now, he's got a brand new car. We're trying to get him, you know, his driver's license and all that, and we worry like crazy because he's got a freaking magic item, a brand new freaking car, a thing that can take him anywhere he wants to go and open up all kinds of avenues and vistas and things like that. But we're sick, you know, because, you know, we know what can happen. You know, I had a friend a long time ago, 18th birthday, brand new truck, went out driving, did something stupid, and spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair, unable to speak, use his hands. It was just an absolute living nightmare. So I know, you know, bad things can happen real easy, really bad things, you know, and that could happen to your first level characters being bequeathed you know, a Vorpal sword. They might, you know, cut off one of their friends' heads, you know, on accident or some shit, right? But, you know, are you a fair DM? Are you going to impose your will because of reasons? And those reasons would be what? You know, either some of the things I just mentioned, or because you can't handle it. And that begs the question: what about it can't you handle? I mean, if the player characters randomly rolled up a treasure map, and in that treasure map, you know, you rolled Horde, and it's great shit, and they somehow managed to get that, you know, for second level, and there's like, you know, 15 magic items in the Horde, and, you know, suddenly they're like 5th and 7th level, you know, from, you know, a short period of very little work. I was playing Elder Scrolls, and I did the same thing. I was like first level, and I randomly just charged into the jungle, and I wanted to go to this one place, and I made it. And in this place in the Elder Scrolls for the Xbox, I just found this crazy armor and weapons and all kinds of just crazy crap, right? Every time I went into this one town wearing it, though, they tried to kill me, but it was really powerful stuff, and, you know, it did have an effect on the game. There were consequences, but what would be your problems, guys out there, GMs, you know, with handing out cool shit at a low level? Is it because you can't come up with a challenge, or you think there would be no challenge? Then you don't know how to create an encounter that would be a challenge, or a situation that would be a challenge. And even then, is that really important? Do you really have to constantly, you know, pressure your situation by thinking that it has to be like a certain level of a challenge? What if the lesson is that that if things are too easy, it's not fun, and you teach the player characters, or the players, that, you know, getting everything just dropped at your feet isn't all that rewarding. Or maybe, you know, you can create challenges for them that aren't, you know, ridiculous, you know, in their complexity and difficulty, because now they've got this stuff. Well, would you do the same thing if they were, you know, the appropriate level with that stuff? Or would you just make it for that level? You know, there's 7th level party, you start looking at 7th level monsters, 6th level, 5th level, 8th level, whatever, you know, somewhere around that area, to say, well, you're this kind of powerful, maybe this kind of challenges, you know, your speed, or not. Because, I mean, how many of us have, at, you know, mid to high level characters, you know, run into encounters that were just paper thin. You just walk through them like tissue paper. No challenge whatsoever, but it's just there. That's just what the GM randomly rolled up. Not trying to make a challenge, but that's just what it was. It was, a handful of bandits or some small level, group of orcs or something like that. And the party just says, yeah, we're just going to kill them all. And it's like 12 of them. And there's like 8 characters, and they're all, 7th level swing, and they're all gone. The fighter just jumps forward and, takes out 6 or 7 of them in one round out of the 12. Is that bad, or is that's just what happened? Because you're randomly rolling encounters. Sorry about that, guys. I was also looking through the Oriental Adventures because I remember that in the ancestry and birthright tables, if you roll correctly or high enough, you could walk away with a +2 magic weapon as your family heirloom, possession, or one of, because you could end up actually getting 10 birthright rolls if you rolled high enough, and in which case you'd have 10 chances at rolling a 99, which gives you kind of like a 10% chance of walking away with a magic item, or magic weapon, really. And even then, okay, well, they started out with their father's sword. It's a +2 weapon, right? Well, now every other sword, it doesn't matter. It's like, you're going to put away your father's sword for this, +2 Dragon Slayer, or this, Sword of Sharpness. Are you gonna, scabbard your dad's sword and retire it and just leave it somewhere, or are you gonna go on throughout your whole career with your daddy's blade, knowing that this is my heritage, this is my birthright, this is part of me now. This needs to then be passed on to my son. Are you gonna give up on that, or are you gonna run with that trope and be fine with that? It's not really codified that these things have to be a certain way. The story I was talking about that I'm reading, in the first book, something happens, and one of the main characters, well, 2 of them, one of them walks away with like the single greatest magic item in their culture, and they'll never be the same again. But their whole people now, have recovered, like the Arkenstone kind of thing. It's like, we have our thing back. We are now complete. We're now whole. And you lucky son of a gun who get to wield it in combat. You are the the big kahuna of their people now, because you were chosen by fate, obviously by the writer, but but in the story, that character is now the chosen one with that. And the other character, oh my God, he got like literally, that guy got that. This other character got like just insane stuff, like literally like everything you'll ever need just handed to him at first level. I mean, literally, like, I don't want to spoil it, but like everything he would ever need, other than like healing potions, and the other things were so badass that the likelihood that anybody would ever lay a glove on him was just like what the shit? I don't remember that. The first time I read these books and reading it, I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. Where's this going to go? Are we going to just watch through the next crap ton of books as this character just walks through everything? I mean, what's the big lesson? What's the big, the big gotcha, or the twist at the end going to be for this particular character? Here he is now, armed to the teeth with literally everything. Oh, it's not that simple, of course. There is a catch, of course, but still, in game terms like that. And mind you, this book was based off a D&D game, so I'm like, knowing full well that back in the day, before TSR really became big in the 80s, people were playing some really crazy games, some really gonzo, some really Monty Hall, just crazy, just you roll up a Vorpal sword at first level, I guess you get a Vorpal sword at first level kind of mentality, and nobody seemed to mind. But nowadays, finding a magic item is like finding hen's teeth or whatever, the equivalent or however that goes. But I'm like, what happened? Were they all better? Were they all more open-minded and more flexible and more able to improvise and come up with stuff, or was it just because it was so new, nobody knew any better, and they didn't know that your first level characters can't have anything but a couple of potions of healing and maybe a scroll and a +1 weapon if they're lucky. What happened? Can we get some more of that energy coming forward? Because literally every game I've come across, it's like feast or famine. And it's all famine at the low levels, and then later on, I was in a game a couple years ago where, like, I'm not going to call anybody out because it was actually kind of cool. We found all kinds of crazy magic items. A lot of times, though, it was stuff that, it was cool for the bad guys, but it really didn't help us out. But it was still magic items, and we could still, sell it and then turn it in, and buy other magic items, which, we'd take a loss overall, but we still got a net gain, of cool stuff for our characters. Not saying that I recommend the magic shop. Some games, sure. Every game, hell no. Most games, probably not. But what's the limit? Is there a limit? Should there be a limit? Do you have a limit? What I ask you guys before I leave and let you get on with your day, which will hopefully include coming back to second breakfast in about 45 minutes. What's the most powerful magic item your first level or really low level character ever found? I'm curious because I was watching cartoons, doing some research, and some of the old cartoons of the 60s, you had characters that probably weren't even first level, running around with things like genie rings and carpets of flying, and there was that cartoon with the Pegasus or the unicorn or whatever figure that when they rubbed it or whatever, it would turn into a freaking thing and take them on adventures and all kinds of other crazy stuff. I know they were cartoons, but if you think none of those cartoons influenced Gary and his friends back in the day, you're probably mistaken. They probably just loathe to admit it, but I'm sure from things I've seen that they were watching a lot more fantasy cartoons than they would ever admit to, and I'm going to keep watching and looking for other sources of 50s, 60s, and 70s influences, because I think there's a whole bunch of stuff to mine out there. But let me know in the comments section what's the most powerful thing you ever found at first level or lower level, or not lower level, at low level. And let's see, because I have a feeling I'm going to get two different kinds of answers. But I will be back tomorrow with something else. But in the meantime, have a great day. Love you guys. And as always, happy trails.